right, welcome back. Today we're talking about Chapter 3, Lesson 6, Lines in the Coordinate Plane. So let's go ahead and get started with the warm-up. So for this warm-up, you're going to substitute the given values of m, x, and y into the equation y equals mx plus b, and then solve for b. Y equals mx plus b. This is a special formula. Do you guys remember what this is called? This is a formula that has a slope and it has an intercept, a y-intercept. This is called slope-intercept form. Okay, so for 1 and 2, you're going to have those values. You're going to substitute them in and figure out what b is. And then for problems 3 and 4, there's two other equations here, and you're supposed to solve the equation for y. So I want you to just go ahead and work out 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh, here's my friend, the pause dragon, reminding you to pause your device, work out those problems. When you get done, press play, and we'll go over them and talk to them about them together. All right, see you in a bit. All right, let's go ahead and see how you did on problem number 1. So I'm going to write this slope-intercept formula here, y equals mx plus b, and then I'm going to substitute these values in. So y is 0. The slope is 2, x is 3, plus b. And then I'm just going to solve for b. So I'm going to simplify this first, and then get b by itself by subtracting 6 to both sides. So I end up with negative 6 equals b, and then I'm going to use that symmetric property and say b equals negative 6. Okay, so if you got that right, and you showed your work accordingly, great job. If you didn't, go ahead and make sure that your work looks like mine. Okay, let's go ahead and see how you did on number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and write that slope-intercept form again, and then substitute the values in. So negative 4 for y, the slope is negative 1, x is 5, plus b, and then let's simplify this. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. And then we want to get b by itself, so we're going to use that addition property of equality. Cancels, negative 4 plus 5 is 1. And then I'm just going to write my answer up here using that symmetric property of equality and swap sides. So the variable is on the left side. So if you got both of those right, woohoo, good job. Let's go ahead and, whoops, sorry, I accidentally hit that. So let me get a new color. Okay, solve each equation for y. So we're going to get y by itself, so you just need to add 6x to both sides. And we're going to be using a lot of slope-intercept form, so make sure you write that 6x plus 9. Write the 6x, the variable, first. Some of you might write 9 plus 6x, but this is going to be a lot of slope-intercept form, so it's just better to get in the habit of writing that variable first. 6x and then plus 9. Okay, so if you got that right, great job. Let's go ahead and see, we want to get this one. So this is really a skill that you're going to need. Some students really struggle with this part, so really pay close attention. Make sure that yours matches up exactly like mine does in the end. Okay, so we're going to move this 4x using the subtraction property of equality. And then notice, I'm going to, because I want to put it in slope-intercept form, I'm going to put that negative 4x first, plus 8. And then, since we know that we're going to be dealing with the slope-intercept form today, one way when you want to get y by itself, you obviously want to divide both sides by negative 2. Now, some people, they divide this by negative 2, right? And then they divide the whole thing by negative 2. And that, it's not wrong, and that works for some cases. However, when we start to graph lines and talk about slope-intercept form, you want to make sure you divide each thing, individual thing, by negative 2 instead of dividing the whole thing by negative 2. Both are the same. This is the same as this. Okay? So just so you know, this right here is the same as this. Because if the whole thing is divided by negative 2, that means that each individual thing is divided by negative 2, or can be divided by negative 2 as well. So it just depends on, well, what is your purpose, right? And so sometimes this is okay, even though this should probably be simplified because 2 goes into 4 and 2 goes into 8. in a regular setting. But especially when you're dealing with slope-intercept form and graphing lines and things like that, you want to make sure that you divide each thing. Negative and a negative is a positive. 4 divided by 2 is 2x, and then that's just a negative 4 there. And then we have our slope-intercept form. So yeah, so just make sure that if you have something you have to solve for y, make sure you divide each individual thing by that, whatever that number is. Okay? Perfect. So hopefully you got all of those correct. If not, go ahead and change your notes so they look exactly like mine. Now let's go over some different forms of the equation of a line, okay? So the first form is called point-slope form. And the point-slope form gives you two things. It gives you a point and it gives you a slope. And this is the form right here. Y minus y1 equals m multiplied by the quantity x minus x1. You should have learned this in algebra, and some of you even in pre-algebra. So this should not be foreign to you. However, if you're new to being in one of my classes and you haven't been in one of my previous classes before, maybe this is, okay? So you're really going to have to pay attention to all this. So point-slope form, y minus y1 equals m multiplied by the quantity x minus x1. You have the slope, which is here, and then you have a point, x1 and y1. Notice that the point, x1, y1, is positive, and here it's negative. So the one thing you have to remember is when you're looking at this form, when you take your point from this form, it's going to be opposite sign. So let's see if you can see what I'm talking about. So here we have this example here, y minus 3 equals 2 multiplied by the quantity x minus 4. So the slope, right, is the number in front of the parentheses. So our slope is 2, and m is the letter we use to identify slope. And then our point is right here. The x part is here, right? So x1, y1. So our x1 is here, 4. So it's a negative 4, so we're going to do it opposite. And this is actually, I wrote it down incorrectly, so we'll have to change that. This is not right. So let's go ahead and cross that out. So this is our x1, and it's negative here. It's going to be positive here, so positive 4. And the y1 is right here, and if it's a negative 3, it's going to be a positive 3. So you just have to remember that that is our point. Okay, so it's kind of opposite. So if this is negative, your y is going to be positive. If this is negative, this is going to be positive. Now, if this was positive, then it would be the opposite sign, and this would be negative here, okay? But it's not. They're both negative, so that means that these are both going to be positive. Okay, so that's point-slope form. The next one is slope-intercept form, okay? And slope-intercept form tells you two things. It tells you the slope and the intercept. Y equals mx plus b. We kind of talked about this in our warm-up. So here, the number in front of x, that's your slope, right? So here, the slope is 3, and then the y-intercept is this number out on the side, which is where the line crosses the y-axis. So it's 6. So that means your y-intercept, or b, is 6. Okay, and so that's slope-intercept form. There's two other forms. The equation of a vertical line, right? So a vertical line is a line that's going straight up in line. It has its own equation. Is x equals a. So x equals 5, that is a vertical line. X equals 10 is a vertical line. X equals negative 2 is a vertical line. X equals 6 is a vertical line. X equals anything is a vertical line. So how we would graph x equals 5 is, I'm going to go ahead and make this ordered pair, this coordinate plane here. And then I would go to where x, right? This is the x-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you just draw a vertical line right there. So that would be x equals 5. That's what that looks like. Okay? So if we know that for the vertical lines, the other thing that we have to talk about are horizontal lines. So this is vertical lines, and these are horizontal lines. Okay? And a horizontal line is y equals a particular number, like y equals 2. Okay, so for this one, if I was to draw my coordinate plane here, this is my y-axis, and this is my x-axis. So this is my x, and this is my y. And then I want to draw the horizontal line y equals 2. I go to the y-axis, 1, 2, and right where y equals 2, I just go ahead and make that horizontal line, y equals 2. Okay? Perfect. Okay, and then just something to remember is whenever you're dealing with lines, you're going to deal with intercepts. Intercepts is where the line crosses a particular coordinate plane. So here, I have my coordinate plane here, and this is my x, and this is my y. And let's say I have a line, and my line goes like this. Well, where did my line cross the y-axis? Well, it crossed the y-axis right here. So this is called the y-intercept. It's where it intercepts the y-axis, okay? So a line with the y-intercept b, right? Because remember when we were talking about slope-intercept form, it has that y-intercept in it, and they use the letter b. So here it's saying a line with y-intercept b contains the point 0, b. And let's think about that. Why are they saying that? Well, if you've been in my class before, what do you always know about a y-intercept? What do you always know? Well, you always know that x equals 0. Well, why is that? Well, here on the x-axis, where is x here? This is when x is 0, right? So that means that whatever this y-intercept is, it will always have the point where x is 0, and we'll use b because that's what the y-intercept is. Okay, but if this was like 2, then it would be 0, 2. But for every y-intercept, x is always going to be 0. Okay, so if we know that, let's go ahead and talk about the x-intercept. The x-intercept is where this line crosses the x-axis, which would be right here. Okay, so this is called the x-intercept. And if you were in my class before, I would always be like, okay, what do you always know about the x-intercept? And what do we always know about the x-intercept? We know that y is equal to 0. Okay, because on the y-axis, this x-intercept is right here when y equals 0. Okay, so regardless of what this number is, when you have the ordered pair where this is your x and this is your y, the ordered pair of this x-intercept, y is always going to be 0, and then the x is going to be whatever number this is. So we're just going to call it a for right now. But in this case, since it's over here on the negative side, it would be negative. Maybe it'd be -2, -2, 0 or something. That would be the point of this particular x-intercept. But it's just really, really important to remember. So whenever there's a y-intercept, you always know that x equals 0, and you can make a point. The key is that you can make a point from the y-intercept. And whenever there's an x-intercept, you know that y equals 0, and you can make an ordered pair or a point from that information as well. Okay, so that's really, really important to know and to remember as we start to look at problems. Okay, because one of the big things about these problems are they're almost like little puzzles, and you have to figure out each little puzzle, and they just give you these little clues. So, all right, so let's go ahead and start with this first problem here. Okay, it says write the line with slope 6 that goes to this point in point slope form. So the key information is they're telling us what the slope is. They're telling us, they're giving us a point, and they're saying that they want their answer in point slope form. So I always like to write down the form of what they want first. So point slope form, right, that's y minus y1 equals m multiplied by the quantity x minus x1. Okay, so I want you to write that formula first. Then we're going to write down the information we know. We know the slope, use the m for slope, equals 6. And we know we have a point, which is our x1, y1. Okay, 3, -4, and this is our x1, y1. So we're just going to substitute those values into our point slope formula. So first one I have is y1. Well, what is my y1? It's -4. So I'm going to rewrite this information. Y minus, right, that's a part of the formula, and then y1 is -4, so I'm going to put that in parentheses, equals my slope, which is 6, multiplied by the quantity x minus x1, which is 3. Okay, then I'm just going to simplify, but the only thing I need to simplify are those two negatives. When those two negatives are that close, they become positive. So my answer ends up being y plus 4 equals 6 multiplied by the quantity x minus 3. And that is it. That is my answer in point slope form. If they're asking for point slope form, this is how you leave your answer, is exactly like this, because this is point slope form. Okay, so you really need to make sure that you read the directions carefully and you leave the answer in the form that they are asking for. Oh wait, let me tell you this. All of these forms and all of these things, vertical line, horizontal line, this needs to go on flashcards, okay? You need to memorize this information. So flashcard. Okay, this should all be memorized. All right, all these different forms and the names that go along with them. Okay, so that's the first one. Let's talk about 1B. It says write the line, and it gives you 2 points in slope-intercept form. So, okay, so what's the key information with this one? So they give us these 2 points, and they want it in slope-intercept form. All right, so slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. This is the form my answer needs to be in right here. Okay? So for this, you need to know 2 things. You need to know the slope and you need to know the y-intercept, right? So out of all the information we have, does it tell us the slope? No. Does it tell us the y-intercept? No. Well, that isn't very good. Well, another question is, do they give us information where we could find the slope out? And the answer is yes, they give us 2 points. And anytime you have 2 points, you can use the slope formula, which we talked about last lesson, to figure out what that slope is. So let's go ahead and do that. So first I'm going to figure out what the slope is. So I'm going to use that slope formula, m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. All right, and then I'm going to label these. This is going to be my x1, this is going to be my y1, this is going to be my x2, this is going to be my y2. And I'm just going to substitute that information in. So my y2 is 2 minus my y1 is 0, all over my x2 is 1 minus my x1 is negative 1. So that ends up being 2 over, these are plus, 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 over 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So our slope is equal to 1. Perfect. So now we know our slope, but we don't know our y-intercept. Okay, so we can solve this one of 2 ways. Okay, one way we can do it is like we did in the warm-up, and another way we can do it is by taking a point and the slope and putting it in point slope form and then converting it into slope intercept form. So let's go ahead and try to use that way first, okay? So I'm going to take my point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m multiplied by x minus x1, okay? I'm going to use, this is my x1, this is my y1, and this is my slope, and I'm going to substitute those values in. So y minus my y1 is 0 equals my slope is 1. X is, well, just x, minus x1 as negative 1. Okay, now I just need to simplify and get y by itself. So y minus 0 is just y, so that's kind of nice. I'm going to need to, there should be a double parenthesis, those 2 negatives are going to be positive, so it's 1 times x plus 1. Okay, and then I would distribute this 1, but 1 times x is just x, and 1 times 1 is just 1. So I really end up with x plus 1, and that is in slope-intercept form. This is solve for y, my slope is 1, and my y-intercept is 1. So this is the answer, doing it this way. This is the first way you could do it. Okay, is to take that slope and take one of these points. It really doesn't matter which one. Stick it into the point slope formula, and then solve it for y. The second way to solve this would be to do it like we did in the warm-up, where we take that equation, y equals mx plus b, and then we're going to say our slope is equal to 1, so m equals 1. We're going to take a point, so I'll take this negative, doesn't matter which of those 2 points. I'm going to take this one, and this is going to be my x, and this is going to be my y, and I'm going to substitute those values in. So y is 0 equals, my slope is 1, x is negative 1, and I'm really solving to figure out what b is. So 1 times negative 1 would be negative 1 plus b, and then we'd add 1 to both sides. So we end up with 1 equals b. I'm going to use that symmetric property of equality and just swap the sides. So now I know that b is equal to 1, and now I know my slope is 1, so I just substitute those values into my formula, and I end up with y equals 1x, and 1x is the same thing as x, plus my b, which is 1. And there's my answer. So there's kind of 2 different ways to do the same thing, okay? One is using the point slope formula because you have a slope and you have a point, and then just solve it for y. And then the other one is really using that slope and that point, but sticking it into that slope-intercept form, solving for b, and then substituting b back into the formula with the slope. All right? Perfect. All right, let's talk about 1c. Now, 1c is a tad bit tricky, and what I'm going to say, I'm going to cover this up. This is all the information that you will have. Like I said, these are little puzzles, right? So it says, write the line with the x-intercept 3 and the y-intercept -5 in point-slope form. Okay, so that's point-slope form. So that means it needs to be in this form. Y minus y1 equals m multiplied by the quantity x minus x1. So for point-slope form, you need 2 things. You need a point, right? And you need a slope. Well, do we have a point? Do we have a slope? No, we don't. We don't have a point, and we don't have a slope. So then the next question is, all we have is an x-intercept and a y-intercept. So the next thing that you want to ask yourself, well, do you have information for a point, or do you have information to find a slope? And that's the tricky part, because up here in this example, it's really obvious. Oh yeah, I have 2 points, so I can just do that slope formula, and y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1, substitute in, figure out what my slope is. Well, here, all they're telling you is that the x-intercept is 3 and the y-intercept is -5. They're not giving you those 2 points like they did in the previous example. Or are they? So this is the thing. This is where it gets a little tricky. This is where you have to realize every time you have an x-intercept, they're not just giving you where the line intercepts the x-axis. They are giving you a point. And that point is, what do we always know about the x-intercept? We know that y equals 0. So they're actually giving you the point, x is 3 and y is 0. They're giving you that point. And what about the y-intercept? When they say the y-intercept is -5, what do we always know about the y-intercept? Well, we know that x equals 0, right? I hope I said y equals 0 over here. But in the y-intercept, you know that x equals 0. So actually, they're giving you a point over here first. X is 0, so that means the x part of this coordinate is 0, and y is -5. So they are actually giving you 2 points, but you have to know that the x-intercept, you can write that as this point, and the y-intercept, you can write it at this point, okay? So that's a little tricky, and you have to know that information. So now we have 2 points where we can find the slope, and then we just need a point, and it doesn't matter. We can use either one of those and then put it into point-slope form. So the key to this problem is understanding that the x-intercept is the point 3, 0, and the y-intercept is the point 0, -5. So let's go ahead and use that slope formula. I'm going to call this my x1, this is my y1, this is my x2, and this is my y2. And then I'm going to put that into the slope formula. And then let's just solve, right? So y2 is -5 minus y1 is 0. And then x2 is 0 minus x1 is 3. We end up with -5 over -3. The negatives cancel and we end up with our slope being 5/3. Our slope is equal to 5/3. Perfect. Okay, so now we have our slope and we have a point. It doesn't matter. So we can write a formula in point slope form. So since we have two different points, we actually could have two different formulas. So I'm going to write down both options so that you guys can see how that works. So y minus y1 equals m multiplied by the quantity x minus x1. So my first equation, I'm just going to use this as my x1 and this is my y1. So it's going to be y minus my y1 is 0 equals my slope is 5/3 x minus x1, which would be 3. And that is a possible answer. And the other possible answer is to call this my x1 and this my y1, right? So I would have y minus my y1 is -5 equals my slope, x minus my x1, which is 0. And then we just need to simplify those two negatives. Whoops, sorry about that. And so it would end up being y plus 5 equals 5/3 x minus 0. Excuse me. So that's how you'd write your answer. I'm sorry. So either one of these would be the right answer. Hold on, let me drink something real quick. Okay, so either one of those would work, but I just wanted to go ahead and show you how you write both of them. Okay, so now we're on to these problems, and I want you to go and try to practice on your own, and just try to practice the same format and the same steps that I did in the previous examples. So I want you to, example 1A, write the line with slope 0 through the point 46 in slope-intercept form. So here's my friend, the pause dragon, reminding you to pause your device, work that problem out. When you get done, press play and we'll talk about it. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, I'm back. Let's see how you did. So we're going to do it in slope-intercept form. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that form down first. Y equals mx plus b. I would encourage you to always write the formulas down. I really want you to on all of your tests and quizzes and homework and things like that. Let's write down the information we know. We know the slope is 0, and we know it goes through the point 4, 6, and that's going to be, well, it just depends. We can do this two ways. I don't know which way you did it, so I'll solve it both ways for you. I'll do it the first way, where I'm going to call this my x1 and this my y1. And I'll put it into point slope form and then turn it into slope intercept form. So because I have a slope and because I have a point, I can put it into point slope form. I'll put that over here. Let me change my color. So we'll do it over here. So y minus y1 equals m multiplied by the quantity x minus x1. So I'm going to substitute these values in. Y minus 6 equals 0 times x minus my x1, which is 4, okay? And so then I need to simplify. I would distribute this 0. 0 times x is 0, right? And 0 times -4 is 0, so this whole side ends up being 0. So then I just need to get y by itself and add 6 to both sides, and I end up with y equals 6. Do you guys know what y equals 6 is? Y equals 6, if you remember, is a horizontal line. Okay? All right. Perfect, perfect. Now that was the first way to do it, and now let's do it the second way, like in our warm-up. So in our warm-up, we called this our just x, and this was just our y, okay? So we stuck 6 in for y equals 0 for the slope, and our x was 4, and we solved it for b. So 0 times 4 is 0, and that's it, right? So b equals 6, and then we use that symmetric property of equality. So we figured out what b is, and now we know that our slope and our y-intercept is. We can substitute it back into the formula, and it would be y equals 0 times x, 0 times x plus our b, which is 6 plus 6. Well, 0 times x is 0, so we end up with y equals 6. And that is our answer. So this is the second way to do it. So both ways work, you know, and this is also a horizontal line. So yeah, if you did it this way or you did it that way and you got the right answer, that's awesome. Just make sure that you show your work accordingly. All right, on to the next example. So this one, example 1b, says write the line through these 2 points in point slope form. All right, so go for it. Here's my friend, the pause dragon. Remind you to pause your device, work that problem out. When you get done, press play and we'll talk about it together. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, let's see how you did. So point slope form, I'm going to go ahead and write that form down. Y minus y1 equals m multiplied by the quantity x minus x1. They give us 2 points, so the first thing we have to do is find that slope. So m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. That's the slope form, right? I'm going to define my variables. This is my x1, this is my y1, this is my x2, this is my y2. Then I substitute it into the formula. My y2 is 2 minus my y1 is 2 all over my x2 is 1 minus my x1 is a negative 3. So on top I get 2 minus 2, which is 0, and then 1 that ends up being plus, so 1 plus 3, which would be 4. So it looks like my slope is 0 again. All right. Okay. And so point slope form, it's 0. I'm just going to choose this point because it's already my x1 and y1, and we're just going to substitute it into this point slope form. So I have y minus y1, which is negative 3, equals 0 times x minus x1. Oh shoot, did I do the wrong one? Yeah, I think I did. Y minus y1 is 2. I'm sorry about that. So this needs to be a 2. Does that look like a 2 now? Yeah, that's my y1 is 2. Y minus y1 is 2. Okay, sorry. And then x minus, this is my x1, is negative 3 here. Okay, so I need to simplify this. Those need to become positive. So my final answer is y minus 2 equals 0, x plus 3. And this is how you would write your answer. Okay, that's one answer. And then the second answer, okay, would be, okay, y minus y1 equals m multiplied by the quantity x minus x1, is if I called this my x1 and this my y1, right? And so somebody might have done that, so I'm going to go over both. So y minus y1, that would be 2, y1, 2, make sure I did it right, equals the slope, which is 0, x minus x1, which is 1, and that's really it. I don't have to do any simplifications. So I kind of know that if I multiply this whole thing by 0, it's all going to end up being 0. But for this particular example, since it's asking for it in point slope form, when it's asking for it in point slope form, this is the way that you would write the answer. Okay, so for it to be correct, you don't simplify any further than this. You just simplify if two negatives are right next to each other and make those positive. But other than that, just leave it in these forms, and then that's how you have the right answer for it being in point slope form. All right, well, that's it for the first example. I'll see you back in a little bit for example 2. All right, bye.